In Istanbul last night, demonstrators clashed with police, defying a government ban on protest. This, Turkey's biggest show of civil disobedience in well over a decade. Its imperfect democracy seemingly sliding towards elected dictatorship.
Üzülerek söylüyorum.
Istanbul's mayor is Ekrem Imamoglu. On Wednesday, his wife filmed him getting ready to hand himself over to police waiting outside his home. "We're facing great tyranny," he said, "but I will continue to fight against the person using this whole process as a tool against me." The person he has in mind is President Erdogan, in power for 23 years and winner of multiple elections, though the press and all the instruments of state seem to have succumbed to his authoritarian will. But the arrest of Mayor Imamolu looks like a new low. This evening he was taken to Istanbul's state security court, with around 100 others accused of corruption and supporting terrorism. And it may be no coincidence that tomorrow he was due to be nominated as a presidential candidate himself. This was the coastal city of Izmir last night. Along with Istanbul and Ankara, it has an elected mayor from the main opposition party. Turkey has a history of military coups, but these protesters see what's happening as a political coup. Turkey's president going to war with his main political rival. Mr. Erdogan is 71 now. Yesterday he lit a fire to celebrate the Nevruz, or the coming of spring. He was himself arrested when he was mayor of Istanbul, and it kick-started his career as Turkey's leader. So he's playing with fire if history now repeats itself. He said he will retire in 2028, but he could engineer an early election or a constitutional change to stay on, presenting himself as an alternative to this week's unrest.
Bir yolsuzluk operasyonu bahane edilerek
They are trying to create turmoil on our streets, using an anti-corruption operation as an excuse. We won't allow a handful of incompetent, ambitious individuals to attack the peace, to provoke our people, to terrorize and cause worry in Turkey.
Ekrem Imamoglu, who is 54, won't go quietly, telling counter-terrorism police that he faces unimaginable slanders against him. He's also been stripped of his university degree, which prevents him from running for president, though his party leader, who now sleeps in the mayor's office, says a proxy could run instead.
If he is unable to apply, then somebody else will be a candidate instead, and they will win. If he faces a political ban, we will turn the next election into a referendum to remove it and set him free.
Turkey's president was today attending to affairs of state, a 21st century sultan who has put his country on the geopolitical map, mediating in conflicts from Syria to Ukraine, and unlikely to face much pushback from President Trump during a trip to Washington planned for next month. Istanbul is home to 16 million people. The question is whether these protests on behalf of their mayor will grow, or whether Mr. Erdogan is now so ruthless that he orders whatever it takes to reassert control.
Jonathan Rugman reporting. Well, earlier I spoke to Gönül Tol, who leads the Middle East Institute Turkish program. She joined us from Washington, D.C., and I began by asking her if Mr. Erdogan's move to detain his main opponent, Ekrem Imamoglu, was a sign of authoritarian rule.
It is indeed a high-risk, high-reward strategy. If things go as Erdogan plans, he can remain in power for life. What he's trying to do is not just block Imamoglu's run for presidency in 2028. He also wants to resecure Istanbul municipality. Istanbul is Turkey's biggest town and its economic powerhouse. And Erdogan used the city for many decades to build his clientelistic network. But when those resources were cut off, when Ekrem Imamoglu won the mayorship in 2019, That was a huge blow to Erdogan's financial network. So
Yeah.
he wants to recapture Istanbul, and the terror charges linked to Imamolu is because of that.
Turkish democracy, many would argue, has been endangered for some time anyway. Is this now the end of Turkish democracy?
Until now, political scientists consider Turkey's democracy as a competitive authoritarian regime. It is competitive because there are still elections. You still have legitimate political parties, and they actually compete in the elections. But it's authoritarian because Erdogan holds so much power over institutions, over media, over courts, that the playing field is not fair. So far, electoral competition in Turkey has been unfair but real. But this is a turning point. Arresting his strongest rival is a turning point where Erdogan is trying to shift the country into a Putin-style autocracy, where he handpicks his opponents and he won't accept any surprises at the ballot box.
But not without a reaction, right? Because although Imamoglu is in jail, or because he's in jail, we've seen demonstrations, mass demonstrations in 7 Turkish cities, including Istanbul. More than 300 protesters have been arrested. Does that now mean that opposition politics has moved onto the street?
That's right. And that's why it could backfire. Erdogan's strategy could backfire on him. And in the past, it did. In 2019, when Ekrem Imamoglu won the municipal elections in Istanbul, Erdogan did not accept the result and call for a rerun. And while in the first round, Ekrem Imamoglu had won by a razor-thin majority, in the second round, people got so angry and frustrated that they handed Ekrem Imamoglu a bigger win. So this could easily backfire. And now that hundreds of thousands of people are on the streets, this could turn into something much bigger that Erdogan had not expected.
And could it turn into something much more violent? Because we know that Erdogan has cracked down on the demonstrations by arresting people, but could he take it to the next level? I mean, could this get really bloody and nasty?
It could. This is the latest demonstration since 2013. In 2013, again, hundreds of thousands of people took to the streets to protest Erdogan's policies. And since then, Erdogan has taken steps to clamp down further on mass protests and to make sure these wide-scale protests do not occur. Until now, you've seen police being very cautious, although since yesterday night, we've seen the police violence ramping up. So this could get a lot worse.
And just finally, I mean, Donald Trump is rearranging the geopolitical furniture everywhere with his actions and his pronouncement. Is President Erdogan taking any inspiration from the way that President Trump is behaving?
Yes, I think President Trump's return to the White House had a huge impact on the way foreign autocrats behave. In the past, there was a slight concern in Ankara about how Washington might react to these repressions. Not anymore. So that's number one. Number two is Trump's return to the White House has created this vulnerability among European capitals. They think that they are now all alone, trying to defend themselves against an aggressive Russia without American help, which forced them to engage Erdogan. So there is now a political climate, international political climate, where the West really doesn't want to say anything to Erdogan because of the things that he's doing to his own people. And Erdogan knows that. And that's really what one of the reasons why he is so emboldened to do these things.
Gönül Tol, thank you very much indeed.